Good morning. Welcome to the fan page of the Law Office of Travell Travis, your low-cost, high-quality law firm. Once again, we thank you for becoming a follower and a fan of our page for our law site, and we encourage you to share our posts, like our posts, comment on our posts, as well as post any questions or comments that you have. We also, as a note, always as a disclaimer, this video is for educational and advertising purposes and is not a substitute for a consultation with an attorney in your state. The question that we want to discuss today is whether or not a church should incorporate a church or a ministry. And so my simple answer to that question is absolutely yes. Some view church incorporating as a violation of church and state, that somehow we're seeking the state to recognize the existence or validity of a church or ministry. But I like to rephrase the question because I believe that this is more applicable perhaps to the question of whether church should seek a 501c3 application, or file a 501c3 application, which is a little bit different than actually incorporating. In my opinion, the issue really isn't if the state recognizes your church, but more so how it recognizes your church. Without an incorporation, basically a church or ministry is considered an unincorporated association. Thus, if sued, the members of the church, not the church itself, can be liable for any debts, for any lawsuits, as well as any contractual obligations. Considering that people will sue anyone for any reason, including a church, incorporation helps to address this issue. Incorporating a church creates a legal entity separate from the members. The church can own property in its own name as a church, enter contracts in its own name, establish its own credit history in its own name, sue as well as be sued in the name of the church, as opposed to the members of the church. When you think about all the things that can go wrong, whether it's a slip and fall on a rainy or snowy day, perhaps a food function in which maybe someone actually takes ill from food poisoning, food contamination, car accidents when you're picking up people for church or traveling on a church trip, as well as we may not want to address it, but with the increasing awareness of sexual abuse as well as sexual assault that can perhaps take place in the church, do you want the members of the church to perhaps be financially responsible for any lawsuits, any debts, anything that may go wrong with the church? Most likely, without incorporation, if a church is sued, the pastor, the trustees, some of them perhaps more wealthy members of the church, may be financially responsible for any debts. Yes, you may have insurance. Yes, you may have a certain amount of property and assets that can cover it. But in the instance where perhaps the injury or the award of a lawsuit exceeds perhaps the assets of the church, as well as the wealth of any member of the church, or even coverage under insurance policy, would you want individual members to be financially responsible for those financial obligations? Now, in terms of some of the disadvantages perhaps of incorporating a church, there's largely the initial filing fees that you have to pay to the state, as well as perhaps any cost to an attorney, fees to an attorney for preparing articles of incorporation, as well as perhaps any bylaws that may come later. There's also an annual report and annual fees that has to be submitted to the state each year. And this is very important because although you may have incorporated, if you fail to submit the annual report and the annual fee in a timely fashion, your incorporation status could lapse or perhaps even terminate, and thus lose the protection that has been afforded to you by incorporating. So it's very important that You have a very responsible person that's going to make sure that the annual report is filed, that the annual fees are filed, so that you don't lose the protection. It's no different, perhaps, if you think about lapse coverage on insurance policy. You have the insurance policy, you fail to pay the premium, the policy lapse, you have a car accident, a person passes away, and then there's no coverage. And so you want to make sure that not only that you incorporate, but that you maintain good standing with the incorporation. It also is important and this can be problematic, especially when you're talking about losing protection, if there's a debt, if there's a contract, some issue with property. You don't want that lapse of coverage to perhaps come back and hurt you. But also it's important that if a pastor or church incorporates, to make sure that all debts, contracts, property is placed in the name of the church. Then you might have to sign as the responsible party, sign as the president/pastor or chairman of the trustees, or whatever the case may be. But it's important to make sure that your debts, your contracts, and your property is also placed in the name of that incorporated church. Currently, 49 states, including the District of Columbia, allow churches to incorporate. West Virginia is the holdout. Virginia once didn't allow churches to incorporate, but with the Jerry Falwell case in the early 2000s, churches in Virginia can incorporate. So it's important that if you're establishing a church or a ministry, that you seek to incorporate perhaps as soon as possible. Because when you start thinking about renting that first building or meeting space, to be able to put that lease in the name of the church, perhaps even if you have to co-sign it, but at least it's in the name of the church. Vehicles, any type of equipment purchased, bank accounts can be done properly in the name of the incorporated church. For an existing church that has never incorporated, there's a process to incorporate existing churches, as well as to transfer ownership of the property owned by those churches, bank accounts, and property from the unincorporated association to the incorporated church. So if you're interested in starting a church and incorporating, you want to discuss the pros and cons of incorporating the church, or the pros and cons of incorporating an existing church, you need assistance with preparing articles of incorporation, assistance with drafting or revising bylaws or adding certain amendments or provisions to the bylaws. The law office of Travell Travis will gladly assist you with those matters. So once again, we thank you for viewing this video, whether a church should incorporate. If this video has been beneficial to you, we ask you to like it, share it, perhaps tag it, perhaps to a pastor or aspiring pastor or board of trustees that is contemplating making this move, or perhaps is getting ready to make some major financial moves, new property, new vehicle, and perhaps is thinking, okay, we're getting ready to go to the next level, and we want to make sure that we have our legal existence properly structured. Once again, this video is for educational and advertising purposes, and is not a substitute for a consultation with an attorney in your state. But once again, please follow our page, as well as like, share, and comment on this video if it has been beneficial to you. Once again, thank you, and have a great day.